So this is the Rugged Revival podcast. We are the home of the UK's country, Americana and Roots music community. And firstly, I just want to welcome back Rugged Ronnie. How are you doing, mate? How are you feeling?
There we go. I'm very good. It's great to be back after my breast reduction surgery, as you said last time. So I can take these off now.
Back down to a double D these days.
Back down to a double D. So there we go. It's lovely to be back and lovely to be on with our next guest.
Fantastic. And going into that, so yes, we've got a very awesome guest joining us on today's show, the one and only Conrad Moore. And we were talking just before the show that I've been pestering Conrad to come on the show for quite some time, and he's finally caved. So thank you. Just a very quick intro from me to Conrad. So Conrad's a singer-songwriter from North Georgia. We've been huge fans of his work since he released his debut album, Save the Southland, which was around 2022, 23. But like I said to all the guests, I think it's better if you introduce yourself and talk about your style of music, because you'll put it into much better words than we can, mate. So over to you, Conrad.
Sure.
Welcome, mate.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. Yeah, I guess starting out with the, how do I introduce myself? Normally what I do, I call it country music, but as you know, like in our modern state of things, like that gets very confusing very quickly. I guess the industry would call it Americana. I'm okay with that, as long as Americana is defined well. I guess I grew up in a blue collar generation. You know, that was the society that I was around, and I guess the oil industry was big. You know, shell signs, Texaco, that kind of thing. Like they call that petroleana, which I understand that very well. When you see that old rusty sign in the antique shop, or you see the collection of oil cans in a guy's garage, like you know exactly what that is. That's American oil. Well, not always American oil, but it's the American oil industry. You know. And the gas industry there. So Americana to me is like something that's just uniquely American. So like the Appalachian Hills where we all grew up, you can tell when you hear those sounds come from that place, and there's usually little hints of it. It may be cryptic, it may be a little bit metaphorical, but you know without a doubt that that's uniquely Southern Appalachia. So I guess like Southern folk would be a better subgenre for the kind of music that I create. You know, and I talk to guys sometimes that after they see you know, I hate that the industry's gone to numbers, but now they see like, oh, you're doing pretty well on Spotify. I used to do Americana. I used to do, you know, and I'm like, I tell them like when I open my mouth, this is what comes out. I didn't have a dartboard and choose a genre. It's like that's just what happened. So, but yeah, I mean that's pretty much the quick and dirty to what I'm into.
No, I love that definition, mate, because you just get lost in the sauce. And we've changed the introduction to this show several times, because if you mention country, some people think, oh, it's pop country. And we think, no,
Right.
not for us, not to be kind of derogatory towards pop country. That's not our
Yeah.
thing. Americana is a sort of weird capture-all, and don't really know entirely what it stands for, but I'm hoping it kind of hits the nail in terms of what we need. And then roots, I think that kind of captures some of the kind of bluesy stuff, because we have some, you know, it's not strictly country. There's people from Appalachia too, that kind of more the blues and R&B even scene.
Sure.
So it's hard, and you don't want to be pigeonholed either, mate. But I love that term petroleana, and it does kind of strike images of the old shell signs. And you know, I'm a big fan of American pickers, so when they're shoveling
Yeah.
through these old barns, man, that's what that reminds me of. That sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So fantastic. So welcome to the show, mate. It's really good to speak to you, mate. So I think a good place to start with, I'll hand over to Ronnie, and we always kind of go back to the beginning.
Okay.
Let's go back to the roots, as we say.
The roots.
Absolutely, Conrad. Great to have you on. Lovely to meet you, and great to be back. You were my first podcast back, so thank you. And I'll be gentle with me. So, Conrad, I'm my all-time favourite question that TJ's missed off quite a few times actually. But I want to go back to, where did baby Conrad start? Where your first steps were, and going into your teenage years, if you could share that with us.
Okay. Yeah, I guess early early on, I was raised very Southern Baptist in the church. We were always singing there. My mom was always in the choir. So a lot of us around here came from that background. And that's where maybe you learn. I didn't learn music theory there, but I learned that conviction and the like when you sing something and mean it, kind of thing. And and those were the early days. But as that progressed, you kind of you start to explore different genres of music and like what makes you feel a certain way, or really what describes how you feel um, musically. Um, and so I got my first guitar when I was probably 6 or 7, and it was more of a drum back then than it was a guitar. But that's how we started. It was an old classical deal. It probably even had nylon strings. They could have even been some cheaper version of plastic. But I was always enamored with the shape of a guitar. Just there was just something about that when you see it sitting in the room, or um, before you even play it, it just looks like a work of art on its own. So that always drew me in. And my dad had this old Yamaha under the bed that the action on it was probably a half inch off the fretboard. And so after I had abandoned the toy that I had, I found that, and slowly learned the G, C, and D around you know 10, 11, 12 years old. And then at that point, you kind of start creating things that in the privacy of the bedroom, you wouldn't put it out on a record. But that's kind of where the true mud lives. And so leading on up to that, I was always really quiet about it. It's nothing that through high school, it's like, I don't know, you maybe think, well, if I do get good enough at this, I can impress a girl, or if I learn how to be funny and I can play guitar, like this will be the 1-2 punch. But then as I continued to spend time with that after work, I realized it was medicine. Like it was completely medicinal in a way that it's like if you don't take it, you're in trouble. Um, and then the songwriting started to do the same thing, where that whatever that energy is that is asking you to put the antenna up and listen for what you should write down. Like all of those things, it took me a long time to learn all that, or just realize all of it, that something was speaking from a different place um, to create. Um, and then one of my several years after high school, one of my ride or die best friend, I was telling him that story. I said it's my medicine, man, and I'm afraid if I share it, that the its efficacy is going to go away. And all he said was other people need medicine too. And so at that point, I was like, okay, maybe I am an asshole for sitting here holding these things into myself and just only taking the medicine for me. I felt like a dope fiend. It's like, no one can have this. So that kind of that's the story of, I guess, how I began writing and exploring those avenues and trying to figure out what this whole thing is about.
That's brilliant. I love the two things that you've described in there, which is you said, and no one's actually ever said that around the shape of a guitar. They said it's just fascinated by this guitar,
Right.
this musical instrument,
Yeah.
this box, the way it's shaped, where it stands in the room. That's yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then I think you're the second person that said it's the medicine. I love the way you put that. I love the way that that the other person did as well. And quite rightly, you should have shared it with the world, and you have. So, thank God for that, really. So, what looking at your sort of early days in music, what were the artists that you looked to, that you heard, that um, maybe encouraged you to start playing a bit more or start writing a
Hmm.
bit more?
Yeah. I was I guess it was probably I might have played a few gigs while I was still in high school, but shortly after, in the college years, that's when we kind of breaking out of the hometown shell and living other places. Um, I started to get into, well, and coming out of the church as well. There was I listened to a lot of Christian music growing up, and so when I got the chance to explore myself, like, oh, okay, um, this didn't kill me. I didn't from the inside out, and and it's like, oh, that actually is kind of nice, So playing in coffee shops and stuff like that, I felt like I had to, like I was a Bob Dylan fan. I like the lyrics and I like his meter and rhyme, and learning try to how to let the rhyme fall at the end of the measure, that kind of thing. Um, and I felt like I had to play things that were familiar as well. If I just came up with originals all the time, you got a crowd full of people that think, well, he can sing in key, but no one knows what the hell he's talking about. Dylan was a heavy influence then, and Ray LaMontagne, um, hell of a songwriter. That kind of stuff. The power in his voice just moves a room with or without a guitar. But I would say, you know, my discovery of other artists was unorthodox in a way because of how I had come out of
Mm.
the Baptist upbringing. So it was kind of sporadic, where most people would have said I started with uh, the Rolling Stones and then went back and tried to find Delta blues. And that my order was all mixed up. So it took me a while to get to you know Albert King, Freddie King, BB King, and work my way
Yeah.
through um, all the Delta guys, and um, then of course I love the Rolling Stones, love Leonard Skinner. Like it's just that's Southern rock is was its own thing. I just couldn't make that music by myself. So I think when
Mm.
I would take some licks and some inspiration from that, and then still put it into a storytelling folk song. Um, and I play well with others. I just don't always do that. But a lot of times, and it's harder to book.
Yeah.
It's harder to keep the band together. So, but inspiration wise, my stuff is all over the map. Um, it, you know, I was in the military for a little bit, and I promise I was the only dude in the barracks listening to Patty Griffin. So there's no, there's, there was no, there was no boundaries on anything. It was like, all right, if I hear it once and it made me feel something, I'm going to listen to it again. So, um, yeah,
Brilliant. Thank you. And just probably just a side question, really, but I know you said about your journey, but I just wanted to see, has your personal journey sort of shaped the kind of stories that you want to tell through your songs? Is it about your personal experiences, life? Is it going through, I know I've listened to a lot of your songs, especially on YouTube. There's a couple that I'll mention later, won't ruin it
hmm
for TJ yet, but there's a couple that you introduced there and I thought it was hilarious, to be honest, one in particular,
yeah,
but yeah, just
yeah, yeah. And sometimes like I've got songs that piece together over 10-year span, um, that I just didn't feel like we're ready to finish, or that kind of thing. And then I've got some like Ballad of the Well is more of a story, not necessarily about any particular individual or myself. And it fell out of the sky in an afternoon, probably 3 or 4 hours. That song was start to finish, buttoned up, um, minus a bridge or something like that. Um, but then the ones that are more personal, they usually take longer because it's like
mm.
I can't. My rule is stay out of the cheese, meaning don't say cheesy shit. um,
Oh, I
because
love it.
you hear that. That's like the first thing you hear when you hear the cheesiness in a song. You're like, ah, next.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
me, that's how I rock. So it's like
So,
it's one of those things where I'm like, don't do that. As long as you don't do that, it's okay. Um, unless it's just the absolute truth, and that's how you would
yeah.
decide to tell it. Um, but so it's a blend between. A lot of times I'll get a more of a theme based idea instead of lyrics, and I just want to write about a certain theme, whether it's redemption or um, just in my personal life, I've always been trying to appease the societal standard, and this was secondary. Music was always secondary, whereas that battle creates this tension in life where you like I should be doing this one thing, and that's what my heart feels like, but I'm over here trying to finish my college degree, and you know I call that sitting through shit just to say I didn't quit. It's like, okay, I've achieved the thing that you wanted me to achieve. I have the piece of paper. Like, now leave me alone. Which a lot of people would say that's counterintuitive and that you're wasting time and your career in the process. But I honestly believe too, if I had started playing shows and running the roads like I'm doing now, in my mid 30s, in my mid 20s, I may not even be here. Because at that point, I couldn't handle the uh, pressures of certain things, like escapes or temptations. But I kind of had the time. I think the timing is right for everything. It's like, okay, well now I have the discipline, and I know where my boundaries are, so it's easier to mingle, because sometimes you can get lost really quick in a city that you don't know anyone. You're 1,000 miles from home, and um, you never know. You gotta really know what you're about at certain points. So um, it's all timing.
Yeah, and well, firstly, thanks for sharing that. I think there's one of the parts that TJ will definitely agree with you around the cheese, and he'll no doubt be using that term going forward. But I think from what you were saying there about what you've been doing in your sort of mid-30s, and then if you were doing it in your mid-20s, it would have been different. Everything happens for a reason. I'm a great believer in that. Everything happens for a reason. So just on another bit of a personal note, really, was there any point in the early days that you doubted your path in music? Was there any point that you thought this isn't for me, or I don't think I could continue this? Bit of a personal question, but
Yeah, there has been. There's been times, like, and I think every songwriter will tell you this, that there's a trigger that goes off as soon as your ass hits the couch to try to relax and be lazy. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why are you not doing the thing? And it's a constant. It's just a constant. Uh, and I wouldn't say it's a pressure. It's just a constant calling. But there's been times where I tried to, like, okay, I'm gonna lay that down. That's not my burden anymore. Um, and it only, like, not you can't even make it 24 hours before whatever that thing is like, grab the guitar, see what that, like, oh, I had something that the squirrel on the tree over there inspired me to do something, or I thought of a line that I should be exploring. So it's like, there has been time. There's never been a time where I was just like, I will never do that again. But there's
mhm.
been times where I'm like, I really want this weight off of me. Um, so, and then learning how to just deal with that being on your shoulders all the time is a different thing. So, um, and it's not a obsessive. You can obsess about it if you'd like to, but it's one of those things where I try not to obsess about it, and I say, like, I'm not gonna miss the best song ever, like, because I used to have that fear, like, if I don't do this, I'm gonna miss that window, and it might that may happen, but it'll go on to the next guy or girl, and it'll still get out. So if I look at that in a way that's like, it doesn't have to be mine as long as it gets out. There's enough for everybody. There's enough to go around, so it'll be okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Conrad. Now, I'm going to take a bit of a sidestep, if that's all right.
Okay.
Sure.
If you will indulge me, Conrad.
All right.
So what I'm going to do, we normally do themes ta-da, on this
Ah,
show. So
okay.
we have just missed St. Patrick's Day by the skin of our teeth. So as we know, it was St. Patrick's Day on Monday the 17th of March. I want to know, the last two questions from me before I hand over to TJ
Okay.
is, have you got any Irish roots, Conrad? And what did you do for St. Patrick's Day? And if you didn't do anything, just make it up.
No,
Make it sound
that's
cool.
okay.
Yeah,
I've got answers for both of those.
brilliant.
I do. I've never done a full DNA test, but I know I'm Scots Irish by the family name history. So Moore used to be O'Morda, O apostrophe Morda, however you spell Morda.
Mm.
And then, of course, in the course of uh, migration, it became more at some point. So I know it's back there somewhere. I've just never bit the bullet and been like, okay, let's find out. Um, find out where we're from. I think somebody at some point had a little affair with some natives though, because I have a hard time with the full beard. But that's a side step. But yeah, on St. Patrick's Day, I just went down to the local Mexican restaurant in town, and I know some of the bartenders and cats over there, so they just
And
hooked me
probably
up with
got the better
with
pint of
stuff.
Guinness there than you did over in England.
Yeah,
To be honest,
possibly,
yeah.
possibly. Yeah, nothing too exciting, but
Brilliant.
yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me.
Sure.
And I'm very proud of that. So I'm actually an O'Riordan. I'm very proud of it. An O'Riordan, O apostrophe Reardon, as
Okay.
opposed to a Reardon, but we won't go into that story because this is your show and I want to talk about you. But I
That's not
did
like
do a
you.
bit of research. Yeah, I did do a bit of research about your name, Conrad, because I thought Conrad, it's got to be an Irish background. It's got to be an Irish name. And actually, it's not. It's Germanic.
Yes, sir.
But
Yeah.
they do have a lot of Conrads in Ireland, and fair play to the Irish. Fair play to all of the O'Moores, the Moors, and the O'Riordans in Ireland. So Sláinte. So if you're listening, so Sláinte. And I'm going to drink my
Yeah.
Guinness today because I missed out on St Patrick's. But there we go. Anyway, back to you. Over to TJ.
Well, there's absolutely no Irish in me. My family are common Londoners and Southerners in England. So, yeah, no, we didn't do much for St. Patrick's Day, but there you go. So, yeah, it's really interesting to hear about your background, Conrad, and growing up and where you've kind of got to now. Um, Before we move on, I think anyone who's not subscribing to Conrad's socials, make sure that you do. Some interesting stuff going on. Always playing a gig somewhere, so it's great to know whereabouts you are. And I say this in the most heterosexual way possible, mate, but you are a snappy dresser. So
Yeah.
I've gone double
Thank you.
denim tonight in homage of Conrad Moore. I can't pull it off though.
I'll make him change, Conrad. Sorry. Sorry about that.
Looks great. Looks great.
So I have mustache envy, and yeah, I'm trying to copy you with my kind of clothing, but I'm not pulling it off very well. Anyway, so we'll move on. So self-taught guitarist and vocalist. I kind of trawled through your bio online, as we do with most people. You were quite difficult to kind of do research on because your socials are quite succinct, and otherwise it's your website. So you kind of put up a bit of a fight for us to do some research, but it makes it more of the interesting conversation to kind of let it flow anyway, mate.
Sure.
So one thing I did see, one of the more recent posts was that "Save the Southland." That's the worst title for anyone with a lisp like me. So thanks for that. But it's hit over 1 million streams on Spotify since it was released. So congratulations, mate.
Bonkers. Yeah.
That's
Congrats.
an
Thank you.
incredible achievement, man. So I suppose that's a great place to start. Tell us kind of how those releases and that particular one came about, because there was a lot of noise online about it in terms of praising it and pointing people into your direction, and that's how I kind of came to kind of hear your music, and I'm glad I did. So yeah, talk us through that, mate.
Sure. Yeah. So on that entire record, I guess I didn't decide that was going to be the title track until we were done tracking. Um, but at the time, I had a handful of songs that I thought were worthy of studio time, and I had a friend that was living in Nashville at the time, and she put me in contact with a guy named Saul Philcox Littlefield. Saul Littlefield, Saul Philcox. Some people know him as both. Some it's hyphenated, but he's an excellent guitar player. He's been on everything from Luke Combs, Tim McGraw. I mean, you name it. He's been on.
Wow.
They call him the Solicopter because he can just shred. So he kind of worked as producer and lead guitarist on that record. And when I told him the idea that I kind of had for the song, um, I was uh, I was playing through a bunch of those songs, and I was nibbling on mushrooms a little bit here and there. Nothing too crazy. Just just getting grounded. And he said, "Well, what's the theme you're going for?" And I said, "Swampadelic." And so at
I
that
like
point,
it.
they had been going down to Muscle Shoals to record, um, and he had a spot down there that was ready to go. And as soon as he said Muscle Shoals, I was like, "Let's go!" And it's right there by Florence, Alabama. Huge music history. And I was like, "Yeah, let's make it happen." And so he gathered up some other Nashville hired guns. Like Miles McPherson was on drums, Whit Wright was on pedal steel, um, an old guy named L.C. Thurman on the keys. But I got lucky in the fact that East Avalon Recorders had the only operational echo chamber in Muscle Shoals. So if you've never seen what that is, it's a concrete shack out behind the building, but it's got all the corners are chamfered, so there's no there's nowhere for the sound to terminate, so it just spirals, you know. So I mean, there was a lot of things we did. A lot of the pedal steel was ran out to the echo chamber, so a lot of those haunty, uh, kind of spooky vibes came
Oh
from that.
wow.
Um, and at one point, it was a little bit of overdub. We played most of that live, but the overdub, my favorite piece, we ran the pedal steel into a Leslie organ cabinet with a rotor on it, and then ran that out to the echo chamber. So it was like this whole, you know, everything. Like it gave you chills in the studio listening to it. Um, and Save the Southland was the last song that I had written on that 6 track EP. So it was the newest, um, and it just kind of held everything. Uh, and it's a short 2.5 minute, you know, little song. But I do have an extended version that I may or may not be about to record
Wow.
acoustically. Put out a video on that soon. Um, but that whole idea of it was kind of just like, um, you know, even with the flare gun on the album cover, it was like a call for help, but like not really needing one, if that makes sense. It's like we'll send up a flare, but we're gonna deal with this however we deal with this. You know, just the way everybody was with COVID at the time, and it just seemed like everybody had that eerie anxiety,
Mm. Yeah.
you know, about them, and it just kind of spun off to, you know, where I was looking around and driving one day, and I was just like, man, this place has still got a lot of potential, and you know, just the region that I'm from, and people need to know what I mean when I say, you know, this is all worth saving and paying attention to. So um, that's kind of the long roundabout story to how that whole record came about from start to finish.
No, super interesting. And I love the album cover. I think it's quite an iconic piece of your work. And instantly when you see that, you recognize it's one of yours.
Sure.
And you're giving away some of your secrets as well in terms of how you've recorded. Because I was listening to Bracken Bryan today, because it's one of my favorites.
Mhm.
And I was like, how is he getting that sound? It's very unique in terms of the pedal steel. And some parts, it doesn't even sound like a pedal steel because of, like you say, the echo chamber that
Right.
it's been kind of run through. And it just sounds incredible. So it's yeah, a fantastic piece of work, mate, and congratulations again for kind of hitting that milestone. May that
Thank you.
continue, mate. Um, so on this show, we invite obviously lots of different guests, and predominantly because we're selfish people, we pick people that we're fans of. So we are genuinely listen to your music, as we do with every guest that comes on, and you know it's an excuse to talk to you and fanboy out. That's kind of what we do. It's as simple as that, really, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah.
And it's a good medium, but it's interesting to find out kind of the background of each artist and where you grew up. And you know, we're nearly 20 episodes in now, and we kind of took a step back the other week, where we were talking offline, and you know, in terms of where we've actually been on the map,
Drinking.
and drinking as we
Drinking and
do,
talking offline. Yeah.
talking a lot of shite at the
Yeah.
time. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but there were some interesting tidbits that came up, and it was like, you know, where have we actually been? Obviously, we've been in the UK with Jack Browning. We've been over to Kentucky, to Texas recently. But actually, North Georgia has been represented really well on the show by no intention at all of ours. It's just, you know,
Good.
we only find out sometimes through speaking that's kind of where you're from. So we've had Eli Kane, Jonathan Payton more recently, Jesse Williams was on too, and now yourself. So you know, out of nearly 20 episodes to be represented that well. So for me, it's obviously a hotbed of talented people in your region. So maybe that's a good place to kind of tell us what the
There's got to be something in the
music scene's
water, is
like.
there?
Ah, it's got to be. Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds like a song that
Yeah.
Conrad wrote, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. What is the, you know, the music scene like where you are?
Well, I think it varies. So you got to me, there's a lot of you can always go find a bluegrass jam somewhere close. Which I'm not a huge bluegrass fan, but um, I understand the roots of that and where it came from, and I feel like when I practice some of those licks, it makes my playing better. So you got the possibilities for that local, the old school stuff, and then you know you're you know a couple hours from Atlanta, a couple hours from that, or you know a few hours from Nashville. You can it's kind of a thoroughfare for the southeast where you can really go see. you can go see the big stuff if you'd like to, um, or you can go find some local shows around here. Like, and I would say that it's not. I don't. I hate to say this and sound like a um, not in a boastful way, but it's not always great. You know what I mean? Just like anything, you're going to find different varieties of things. But I like the support of the scene around here is um, it's super supportive, especially for anybody who's touring because they just know the ins and outs and the grind of that, and how little it pays and that kind of thing. So I guess the that side of it I do love. It's like nobody. I saw a quote recently that said no musician's ever gonna judge you for trying to sing a song. So when I see someone else up there, I know what that feels like on stage. So um, I would never cast that kind of judgment and saying, "Oh, I would have done this different. I would have done that." Like that's how the piece of art came out. Um, that's what it is. Like the scabs and scars, all the blood, sweat, and tears all together. So, um, but I do wish there was a better. I wish there was a little more community. Um, I guess immediately in my immediate vicinity, because I kind of have to go reach out. I saw you guys were you guys meet up with Colby T. Helms, some of those guys
Yeah,
from
yeah. Colby was
Powell River.
over a few months ago. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I love that style of music he puts out, and so I kind of travel, and go to the Powell River sessions, like kind of connected to some of them, Jordan Lee King, and I'm playing with Jonathan and Abigail in a couple weeks down in Cumming, Georgia. So
Mm.
brilliant.
um, so it's I guess once you get into it, you realize the world is a lot smaller, that music world, than
Yeah,
than you would have thought about it when you're trying to attack it, initially. Um, but that doesn't mean that it gets any easier. Trying to book gigs, and I feel like most your PR and booking agencies now want an easy project. They're not trying to build something from the ground up, which I understand that. But um, if you could have that approach, or you could leave that talent laying somewhere forever until they become jaded and decide they don't want to do it anymore. Um, so it's all kind of a catch 22 um, as far as the scene, that music scene is concerned around here.
yeah. That's interesting. I mean, we speak to a lot of artists, and one of the questions we generally ask is, where do you receive the most support? A lot of them say it's outside of their kind of hometown, and I'm sure it was the North Georgia artist that said actually a lot of it was within, and the artist from Virginia, like Colby T. Helms, said the
Yeah,
same. So there are some good community kind of aspects to where you are, but like you say, in some places it's not so prevalent, and you've got to cast your net perhaps a bit further.
right,
But
right.
you're playing with some fantastic people, Jonathan and Abigail Payton. I mean, we had Jonathan on, and again, one of our favorite artists, and
Yeah.
playing likes of Red Rocks, is
Yeah,
pretty damn incredible for an
yeah,
independent artist, booking his own stuff primarily and then going to back to work, doing the day job the next day. And so
right.
is this your kind of full-time occupation now?
Well, yes and no. I've gone back and forth a few times. I've always, done some kind of work on the side, whether it was, you know, full time all the time or part time, and this was kind of in the background. But to be honest, over the last couple years, I've quit and started working as with a subcontractor, and then got out of that again because one, the music was either feast or famine, where you had time to do a side gig or you didn't. So it was just that back and forth, can get you a lot of times when you're thinking, like, well, these bills are still due at this point. And we don't have anything on the books until then. So trying to juggle the guarantee um, with the faith side of it is a challenge. So I've actually been back helping my dad at his small engine shop some on the side too, which is nice when it's family because you kind of um, come and go as need be, but struggle to stay present when you're there sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
But
You get the flexibility when it's dad, I suppose, don't you,
right,
mate?
yes, yeah,
Which is cool.
absolutely.
So I suppose social media is a very difficult thing to manage on top of just playing the music, writing the music, playing venues. etc. I mean, how do you deal with that side
Right.
of things? Because some people just go viral overnight with one song and no grind, and then others are grinding it out day in, day out,
Right.
and just finding it a little bit more difficult. How's your kind of journey with that?
Well, my journey with social media has kind of been a struggle because that's always been the place that I hated the most. Um, as far as when I would see something that just kind of get it was cringy to me, and I didn't want to ever have the possibility of me coming across that way, which is a pride thing and it's a vulnerability thing. Um, but you just see all the guys they have the every week they say the same thing leading into it, and it was just so to me it was so mechanic that I didn't like the approach to it. But then recently I've had some realizations that you can either run the roads for 15 years and hope to build a fan base, or you can use this millions of avenues of free advertisement. So there's a quote that I like that says, what do you call a fisherman without a line in the water? Just a man. So if you're not doing it, like you can either run the roads like that and try to build your fan base, or you can not attempt to go viral, but you got to put it out there to uh, possibly bypass that step of we'll hire you, but you need 2 years of experience first. So that gap is what I think social media is great for, and you don't even have to pay for the sponsored ads if you've got something worth sharing. Just trying to let that spread organically and hope for the best. But also putting that in a place priority wise where it doesn't come before the art. Um, I think a lot of times people can just go for the viral thing, whatever that looks like, and attempt it, and it may not be what was coming through that day that everyone really needed to hear because they were just aiming at this virality idea that it may or may not be
Yeah.
authentic.
That's is a good way of looking at it, and the music that you guys create is all about authenticity, and I suppose it's always that battle of keeping that in check with the social media side
Right.
that can be very inauthentic, and we struggle with that ourselves just as a
Yeah.
podcast. We don't want to
Sure.
put out spam stuff out for the
Shit.
sake of it. Oh shit, yeah, exactly. If we're gonna
Let's be
say,
honest.
we don't want to put any old shit out, but we got to be kind of reticent that we need to put stuff out,
Sure.
but try not to force the kind of issue. So no, thanks for sharing that, mate. So obviously going back to your social media and kind of trawling through that, you're playing tons and tons of gigs, which is fantastic to see. Some really cool venues. Where's your kind of favorite hangout spots? Where's your favorite place to play?
So I guess over the last couple years that uh, my favorite place that I've played, there's a listening room in Dunn, North Carolina called Bird's Nest Listening Room. Sean and Carla Bass they're music fans through and through, and decided like we're kind of done traveling so much for this. Let's make a venue and have people come to us. And I love the listening room idea too because I played a lot of noisy bars. I played a lot of places where like people could care less. No matter how good the song is, they're going to be loud and talk and laugh and cry and scream and all those things. And you can't take it personally, but it is nice when you step into a room where the venue owner steps up there and tells everyone, "Shut your pie hole." An artist is about to about to play some
Too
original
right.
music. So that one really it stands out to me. I've played it a few times, opening up for some other folks, and I did a run with Tommy Prine uh, to start the year off. And there's another spot called the Reeves Theater in North Carolina, and it's just like it's been remodeled, but it's the old auditorium style. And for some reason, I just love that listening uh, setup when you got a place that's made to listen to music, um, or listen to a show, watch a show. Um, and it's kind of the same way where the vibe is tune in, for we're only going to be here for 2 hours, so you can save your save your other stories for just a little bit and listen to some music.
Yeah.
So far those kind of places really stand out to me because I'm getting attention.
Too right.
I'd say too,
You
right,
should be.
mate. Shut your piles. Yeah,
Yeah.
Conrad's play. That's fantastic. And you mentioned doing the Power River sessions as well. I love that sort of thing. We're trying to kind of replicate something over here in the UK under the Rugged Revival banner of something like that, because it's just fantastic to get that kind of raw kind of music across in those settings. And we've got lots of beautiful settings over in the UK that we can kind of use for that aesthetic. So have you got the plans to do any more Power River sessions or anything of that kind?
Yeah, Neal's been trying to get me to come back up there. He really wants to just go fishing. So, but I assume when we go fish, we're gonna do some music as well. Because I think one of the things you run into when you do that, if you don't do it on a few different days, you have 3 or 4 videos where you're in the same clothes. You know what I mean? In the social media side of things, it doesn't take a detective to figure out they filmed all that in one afternoon. Um, so unless you're going to change clothes and do a few different takes of different songs, um, but I would love to get back up there just because it reminds me a lot of home right there. It's not too far away, but what he's done is that grassroots thing where it started out with him sitting on a cooler by that same river, and then it's led to what it is now. Um, and I love those full circle stories like that. So anything that's out there, that hits that vein, I would gladly be a part of, um, and enjoy doing that.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think
And
I
go on,
think
mate.
we need to keep up we need to take up fishing. That's what we need to do, because everybody that we spoke to is like, we're going fishing.
Yeah,
Hunting
We're going
or
to do some
fishing.
videos, and
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah,
why are we not there? That's what we need to do. Yeah. I was just
We
right. I'll
don't
get
we
us a
don't
couple
have
of
many
rods.
good fishing
Yeah.
spots. That's probably why, mate. Not like
yeah.
over there. But yeah, I encourage everyone to go and check out the YouTube video for the Power River session, because that is my favorite song that you've put out so far, the Whiskey Night. It's incredible, and the way it's recorded. I've been sharing the hell out of that for anyone that will listen to me, which yeah, hopefully it's quite a lot. So
Thank you.
um, fantastic. So over to you, Ronnie. I've been talking for a long time here, so I'll let you have the limelight back, mate.
How can I possibly do that? I was actually just looking at I was actually just trying to find the song that I was listening to over the last week, and I cannot find it for the life of me. But it was a live set that you were doing. One was the Bracken Bryan song, and the other one was, and I couldn't remember the name of it, but I'll get it before the end,
Maybe sing a
and I'll
bit
make
for us,
sure.
and we'll try and guess what you were listening to.
Yeah, it would sound like I'm doctoring a cat behind the screen, so I won't. Anyway, so talking about playlists, we started a playlist, TJ and I, well, mostly TJ, started a playlist, and it's exclusive for our podcast guests and artists that we meet on the road. So, what 2 songs should we add to this that reflects your work, so everyone can check you out?
um, I would say one would be Keys to the Castle. And my explanation on that is, um, it, Spotify just has changed this. Used to, it was an artist top 5, and then that stream number. But now you can click more and see. So I think because of where Keys to the Castle was on the track list, it got buried, a little bit. And but it's really like a to me when I play that song live, I feel every piece of it, and that's more of a and the metaphors that are in it. That's just really a it's a song that um, I just I give it a lot of love. So I'd like to see it get a little
Hmm,
more love out there. And I truly believe in the power of the playlist too, because that's how I find a lot of
yeah.
new music myself. Um, so Keys to the Castle, and I don't know. The other one would just have to be you guys' favorite.
Can I pick
We'll
that then?
argue, we'll argue over that one then. That's fine. I'm up for a fight. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Um, so back over to you, really. I just wanted to know, what's the best album or single that you've listened to? I was asking people, I was going to try and reduce the time down, because there's been so many, and there's so many different decent changes
Mhm.
in country and sort of Americana roots. But
Yeah.
um, what is the best album or single that you've listened to in the last 10 years? I'm going to keep it at 10 years, because then that covers a span of
Okay.
a bit of old school, a bit of new school, a bit of everything. So over to
Yeah.
you.
So I need to, and I need to pick one album or one single.
Well, I'll give you two. Go on.
Okay.
Go on, you can have two.
Man, that's so difficult because the way that I listen to music, I'm a top down listener if there's a body of work there. Um, but I'll get stuck on something for a month or two, and then move on to the next thing. But I won't forget about it. I'll go back to it when something else pulls me back in. But God, the best. I hate those questions. Um,
Or maybe a
Sorry about that.
memorable
I'll go
one.
back.
Yeah.
well, I could go on and on about different ones. I think so. Going back to the authenticity thing, are you guys familiar with Ian No?
Yeah.
Um, so he's got a couple records that I keep going back to, but just that to me it would be, and I'm not saying he is the best or couldn't be the best or whatever else like that,
Yeah.
but to me that is the most genuine music coming out of Southern Appalachia, um, in that realm where he's got the song about Irene, just the kind of the drunken misfit of the family that stumbles back up to family dinner, and she's just it's so embodies like so many people that I know around here. Um, and it's like, damn, how does he write about that kind of stuff? So uh, it seems so fluid for him for it to come out that way. Or singing about shade tree mechanics or things like that. Because sometimes that's where you get into that cheese category when you're trying to. You don't want to say, you know, step by step what you're doing through your day. You want it to be metaphorical and you want it to sound artistic. And um, but I think he's River Fools is if I had to pick one, I keep going back to that single all the time.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So, on the as you well know, as we explained it in the introduction, we try to bring emerging talent on. We try to get our favourite artists on here to talk to. Now it's a bit of a time, so you can give a shout out to someone that you might think is an emerging artist or emerging talent, that you think people that listen to this show would like to listen to or should be listening to.
Okay. Ooh, these are
Here
good questions.
we go.
Yeah. Um, man, I would say you should kind of saying someone that is probably not on much of a radar, but should
Yeah,
be.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I honestly, are you guys familiar with Jordan Lee King?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
little bit. He knows those guys. I've been trying to press him on to um, anybody I can, just his lyrics. Can I name more than one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's a
absolutely.
Of course.
there's another band out of Asheville called the Graybirds,
Yeah,
um,
okay.
that everyone should check out. Asheville, North Carolina is kind of a unique music scene, but there's a lot of good stuff going on up there. And I'm not sure if those guys are even still playing together, or if they've parted off into other bands, but they've got some they've got some tracks out there. Check out a track called Billy Packard, um, and I think I'm afraid to move my phone because it might
Mm.
um, it might hang us up. Um, But I'm trying to think of anybody else that might be. Man, there's so many good ones.
Yeah.
It's hard to say who you shouldn't miss.
I
But
mean,
I think
we'll certainly have a look. We'll certainly have a
yeah,
look at them.
but following podcasts like you guys are doing, and then channels like Powell River, that's the best way right now to find that I think
Yeah.
to find like genuine music that's being created now, just because the creation process is so much different than it used to be. So and everybody's distracted. If they're not willing to listen to you for 5 seconds, they're not going to
Yeah.
give you. They're not going to listen to
Yes.
your
Yeah.
record from the top down.
Yeah. And this is why, we love bringing, yourselves on, people like yourself who are, striving and have worked hard for a long, long time to do what you're doing. The amount I was shocked when I first started this, you know, well, nearly 20 episodes now, as TJ was saying. When I first started getting involved in this, I didn't realize how much time, effort, lack of money there is in this whole world of this music, of good talented artists, and we've had some, including yourself, we've had some incredible people on this show. We're very, very lucky to be able to do this, and to have you join us. So, you know, shout out to you and all the rest of the artists that have joined us on here, because it is such a difficult world. It really is, and I didn't realise. You know, it's been a learning curve for me every minute of the day. So yeah, I appreciate it. So just a bit of advice from you, Conrad. So if you've got emerging talent, if you've got emerging artists, you saying that, you know, when you were going to the Baptist church, 6, 7 years old, you know, all the way through to where you are now, what advice would you give these up and coming artists, or people that may have a bit of a hidden voice, that aren't really quite ready to step out and say, I've got a voice on me, I can write a song, because it's not just about singing, it's about playing music and playing instruments. What would you advise these people?
Yeah, I would say two things mainly. One is, if you're especially if you're a songwriter, um, and this is probably specifically to songwriters, but be careful where you put the audience in your priority list, because there's a lot of times where, like, say a lyric came across my table and it gave me chills. That's the most important thing. Not thinking like, oh, what's this crowd gonna think at this venue? Or I can picture myself at Red Rocks saying this. Like, if that priority is audience first, it's just never, you're gonna be quicker to the cheese at that rate than you would be if you just let it be. Um, so I think just making sure that the art actually comes first, and don't sweat everything else. You're going to have to concern yourself with it to make any traction, but not letting that bog you down to the point where you don't do anything because it seems overwhelming. And I guess the second thing would be, um, just like when I stepped into the studio down there in Muscle Shoals, if I had researched all of those Nashville session players, I probably couldn't have walked in the door out of just nervousness, because but I decided to, like, okay, I'll meet them when I get there and see, how we all interact. And they're all A-listers. And that was just the thing that I fell into. And I had a thought that morning before we started tracking. Um, I don't belong here. These guys are way
Wow.
too talented. Um, I don't know anything. Um, I don't know music theory. I don't know. I could play a few chords and write a few songs. Um, and then there was this. I went to the bathroom in that place, and as I was washing my hands, someone had written, um, in reverse so that it would read forward on the mirror, "Be kind to you." So, and it was like, just be kind to yourself. And so I was like, okay, I can handle this, and just went in there and we did our thing. But what I realized was none of those guys were songwriters. So the kind of the way the music industry works, if it's a pyramid, you got all these badass players, you got producers, you got audio engineers, and at the top you've got the source material, which is the songwriter. But in the industry, it's more like this. So the artist is going to be on the lowest totem pole most of the time in any given room. But if you pull that source material away, everything else really has no foundation, um, because that's what they want. They're looking for new, fresh material to play. So ideally, if you got your own band, you guys grew up together, and you've been friends for 15, 20 years, that's a lot stronger bond. But if you find yourself in these different rooms, different places, like, remember your worth is kind of what I would tell artists, because imposter syndrome is very real, um, especially when you get out into the wild like that.
That's fantastic bit of advice, and and listen up. You know, the couple of words that you just said there, be kind to you, absolutely, and
Yeah,
fantastic advice. So thank you very much.
sure.
Now we want some gossip. Let's not mess around. Let's not mess around here, right? Um, I've got a couple of random questions, and I know that we're
Okay.
taking a lot of your time up, but
No, you're good.
it's been so good so far. And I know that TJ's got some questions he still wants to ask, but a couple of random ones. You've played a lot of gigs, obviously recently, and I want to know, what's your favourite thing to do after a gig?
uh Drink beer.
Perfect. Move on. Right.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
Yeah.
um, No, I would say sometimes depending on the time, set time. I like to I like to eat well before or wait till after. So a lot of times, if we, especially if it's a place you've been to, you know where the hot spot is for good food. So um, taking care of that, you never want to leave the table and step on stage. If that makes
Yeah,
sense, you gotta
yeah,
kind of
Mm.
give some buffer time for that.
yeah.
So, food.
And then outside of music, I know you mentioned about fishing, but
Mhm.
is there anything else that you like doing? Is there anything else you get involved in that people wouldn't expect you to be involved in?
Yeah, probably so. I am the fly fishing bug bit me several years ago, and then I got into tying my own flies, and my OCD loved that too. Um, so those between those two, and I got a dual sport motorcycle. I ride with some friends. So we anytime we get a chance, the beautiful thing about dual sport is you don't have to trailer the thing to the off road site. Um,
Mm.
so you can rip around and do all those things and cut up like a teenager. Um, and then so I do that a little whitewater kayaking. I wouldn't if there's any kayakers that listen to this, I'm not an expert. I just enjoy the thrill of that. And there's places in that world where you can only see them if you got in a kayak and went down. We're lucky to have the Chattooga right over here in South Carolina next to us, and what's a
Mhm.
confluence, so it's on both sides. But there's some beautiful places down in there that you wouldn't hike to, but you can get to them pretty swiftly with a few friends and a couple kayaks.
Conrad, I've just realised how boring my life is outside of
Oh no.
work, outside of work, and outside of podcasting. But maybe I need to look at doing some other hobbies. But no, amazing, thank you.
Yeah.
And I've got one final question because I know that TJ is bursting to ask his questions. Um, I've asked a couple of artists this, and I think it's so important. Another personal question about you. Um, but I want to know your top three goals. And it could be your top three goals for the rest of your life. It could be your top three goals within the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whichever. But I'd love to know what are your top three goals going forward.
Okay. Top three. Um, Man, those are good questions. Um, I would say, uh, I'd say my number one goal is have fun, no matter what. Um, it's so easy to get bogged down with all the red tape of life. You just can't forget that um, you take a few breaths in and out and move your hands, move your feet. Like, okay, we're not. It's not as bad as it seems, um, or bad as the smoke and mirrors would have us believe. Um, so I write that a lot too in journaling and stuff. I'll be trying to get in, introspective, and then I'll just in caps. I'm just like have fun. Um, so I know that doesn't sound like a good goal for making money, but that's my number one.
Yeah.
Have fun, and I guess the second is would be my the way in my process is like work steady. Um, uh, each day, like instead of trying to waterfall it, where you're trying to get everything done, and like this has all got to happen now. It's all got to be here. So, um, as far as that goes, just work steady at a pace that doesn't wear you out and doesn't underdo it or overdo it. In that sense, and I know that those don't sound like these don't sound like great goals on paper. They probably wouldn't, but as far as lifestyle, they work. Um, and my third one would be more tangible. Is like how I look at the music industry is I'd like to be playing X amount of shows, say 150 shows a year, and still doing the things that I love to do on the side. Um, and then also I'd like to get into like helping younger artists kind of navigate some of this stuff. So that's on my list. Um, because I'm 37 at this point. I don't know if I can. I could probably do this for a little while, but who knows what the cutoff is according to society? Are they going to want to listen to a 55-year-old, you know, haggard dude sing about these things? So that's kind of in my back burners. Like I always want to be in the industry somehow in some fashion. So um, yeah,
Well, Conrad,
have fun.
I know that them three goals. Maybe we'll come back in a few years and ask you how you're getting on with the three goals. But I'm sure that you will stay true to them because you've done all of them so far in this podcast. So anyway, I'm going to stop waffling now. I'll hand over to TJ. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And no, it's commendable, mate, to kind of have a goal where you're supporting and giving back to kind of the younger artists. And you make yourself sound like you're so old. You're 37.
Yeah.
Now I feel old because I'm 40. So
and you're younger than us.
but it's all right. Adam Hood's still going, and I'm sure, I don't know, I don't guess how old Adam is.
Listen, if Willie Nelson is still going, we're all right.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I liked your story about, the imposter syndrome and stuff. I think we all have those sort of elements in our life. I mean, actually, me and Ronnie have reverse imposter syndrome. We think we can do absolutely anything despite having zero talent. So, and we did that the other night when we had a few whiskeys, I do recall. And I play guitar very badly. Ronnie sings semi-okay, I think. It sounded all right that night. And we were going to book a recording studio. That cost a lot of money. I'm glad we didn't.
I can't believe you can remember all that.
I remember everything. So yeah, we need to calm down with our egos, I think, mate. But it's great in terms of. It's always good to find out what's coming up next for you, mate. And you mentioned kind of re-recording "Save the Southland" as an acoustic piece, and what else is kind of coming up that you can reveal at this stage, or kind of.
Yeah, I've this is not too much to say, but most people would assume this after a record being out 2 years. I'm writing for an LP. I want to have a 10 or 12 track body of work. I feel like that's in order for someone at this stage in the business. And then we may do the single game for a little while after that, but I still need to finish up. I have the ungodly amount of unfinished songs that you never know, and part of that's my fault where you need to sit down and finish that stuff. But sometimes if it's not coming in, you can't force it. Um, so we got some more writing to do for that aspect. And I can't say who it's with at the moment, but I've got a good June July tour coming up with a good friend of Benjamin Todd's. I'll say that much. Um, I'm not. They probably wouldn't mind if I said it, but I haven't talked to them, so I don't want to spoil anything. But that'll be a big run. And then going back to the social media things, you guys will probably see a lot more of that out of me over the next several months and through the rest of this year because it's just got to happen. If I as much as I hate it, it's got to happen. So I've got some good video ideas that I'm gonna do. Some with a crew, and then some just by myself. I've got an old 2006 Tacoma with a power jack in the back of it, so we can just go park that thing off anywhere and hopefully get it far enough away from the microphone where I can run a 200-foot cable and put the amp up with a microphone and guitar and make some things happen. So
Sweet.
hopefully.
That sounds perfect. And you can reveal your secrets when I pretend to stop recording later on. That's how we normally get you guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we touched on artists that have been over to the UK recently, like Colby T. Helms, and there was a few Appalachian artists as well, Daniel Kane, Lance Rogers, and Hunter Flynn as well. So I met those guys over in Stafford.
Nice.
I think it was the last month. I forget. Time moves so quickly. So it's great. I think there's a real appetite in the UK, and those guys have set an amazing kind of path where we can do almost a cultural exchange where we can, swap our guys and you come over and, is that something that you'd ever kind of considered or interested in doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, it's just a thing where sometimes if I think about it too much, I'm like, how is this going to work? Or how is this if I'm not making any money here? How am I going to go make some money in the UK? But those things are go back to the have fun aspect. Some things you just go do because they feel right. But to me, it all goes back to the art. Like if I get a chance to go share something anywhere that calls, I'd be honored to. So there's definitely no roadblocks between here and there.
Awesome. We will try and make it happen, mate, as best as we can with the contacts that we've got. But
Yes.
no, that's really cool, man. So in terms of, I mean, we keep talking about, artists. It is a struggle for a lot of people. There's not the money in it that people just assume there is. Even if you've got a million streams on Spotify, the amount that kind of ends up in your pocket is obscene, in comparison to, the Spotify people. So in terms of how, we can support you or your fans can support you or listeners, what is kind of the best way that kind of works for you?
The best thing right now, until I've got a bigger merch pool, I'm trying to get some stuff going where that's available online all the time. Not quite there yet, but the best thing that anybody can do is just tell a friend, um, and hope that that friend tells another friend, um, because the way that spreads is, it's like a slow fire. It has to work its way out at its own pace, and um, and if people out there are expecting it overnight, I think that's a fatal flaw too, because you're gonna get let down if that's your hope, even if you think you have the greatest song ever written. Um, those things are out of our control. The Oliver Anthony's of the interwebs are, that's few and far between. So yeah, just tell a friend and tell them to tell a friend.
We will certainly be
Yeah,
doing that, mate, for sure.
thank you.
We've been talking a long time, Dan and I, particularly. Is there anything you want to plug or anything you want to ask us particularly? Over to you, mate.
I would say, I don't know. You put me on the spot.
We like to do that.
Yeah. No, I guess if I had any questions for you guys, it would be, what are you, what are things that you look for in artists that you would like to have on your show, or is that, something? I guess in a more direct sense is how can I be more appealing to other podcasters or venue owners or things like that?
For my perspective, because I was the one pushing to have you on, just doing what you're doing. Your music is fantastic. I think the way that you market yourself is great. Great aesthetics. Like I said at the beginning, trying to copy your look, mate. It's not
Yeah,
working very well.
yeah.
But
You
I
nailed
think
it.
me and Ronnie are simplistic people. If the music is good, we like you. Can't really give much advice on the marketing stuff because we're just not experts in that side. But
Sure.
from what we like is what we like, and you're obviously pulling out some incredible music. Can't wait to hear what you're pulling out next from what you're saying, and I think it's just perhaps just keeping people informed, more often. And like you say, it is a struggle to do the social media side because A, it feels cringe. B, it's a time aspect. And knowing how to work the algorithm, I've given up trying to figure that thing out a long time
Yeah.
ago because you can just get consumed by it. But I think it's just pulling out things that represent you really well. And if you do that authentically, then I think people will naturally gravitate to you, particularly with your music and your look, mate. So that's what I would say for you. Anything from you, Ronnie?
You've nailed it. I just think, be yourself. Everything that you've done here tonight on this show is absolutely the right thing to do. And we always look for, the fact that it is the music, but the artist, be be a good person, just be up for a laugh, do exactly what you're doing. And actually, we're just here to try and help the one community that you said that you want closer to yourself. We want to be able to be closer to people here, and to bring the community closer to them. We are one big community. We'll always look after each other. And I'm hoping that will be the same. We just want that sort of, as you said, tell a friend or hand on a favor, hand it down the line, to build that community. So no, you're smashing it. So
Fantastic. That's all the questions I have, mate. So, Ronnie, would you like to kind of do the final honours, mate?
Well, Conrad, it has been an absolute pleasure to meet you. It's been an absolute pleasure to share your thoughts and all your history from from a very very young age. And to everybody, you've been listening to the totally talented, inspiring, and epic Conrad Moore. Thank you so much for joining us, Conrad. If you've got a drink near you, if you wouldn't mind raising it, because we do this at the end of.
Can I go get it?
Go for it.
Yeah,
Go for
yeah.
it. Yeah.
It's only 18 after 5 here, so I have a rule when it's not a work day. You have to wait until after 5.
Yeah.
We're good now, though.
Oh, you're a good man.
Something about 5 o'clock somewhere, song somewhere, or whatever. Yeah. Anyway,
That's
so
right.
we're going to raise a glass. We're going to raise a toast to the grit, the grind, and to the revival. Cheers and sláinte for listening. All the best.